Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on a guest who went through the system, survived it, and has come out the other side with a very different outlook and approach in life. He has a website, a podcast called Surviving the System, and is also a life coach. Everybody, welcome Dancing Dave to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much for coming on. It's an honor to have you on here, and it's a treat for me to speak to somebody who has survived the system that I went through, because there's not very many of us who have uh, survived the system, firstly, got out of our predicaments, and then to be red pilled and know the things that we know now. And the different topics you speak on, there's not very many of us. So I'm very honored to have you on the show. And, I look forward to a wonderful conversation here.
Oh, yeah, and me as well. And the honor and privilege is mine. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. And also, Mimi is here, everybody in the audience.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
So, Dave, so why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, what brought me here is 2015 to 16, I did 18 months in the Nebraska Department of Corrections. During that time, beforehand with my arrest and going through the legal system, that was my very rude awakening, to having the curtain pulled back and seeing the inner workings of what's actually going on. And it was very eye-opening for me to learn about this entire paradigm shift that I had, where I had this view in my mind of, well, anyone that, got arrested, well, they must be a bad person and they deserve it. And then being incarcerated with those people that I had that mindset about, and just having it completely shift and turn into a 180-degree turn. And then to come out on the other end of that, just on fire to do better, to be better, to make something of my life, to utilize my newfound purpose and to refine that, try to help other people who have been through the system and really just prove them wrong.
Wow.
I'm gonna be the exception to rule, if nothing else, and I'm gonna help other people be the exception too.
I love that, because that's how I look at myself. Like, I don't fit in any box. I transcend every box.
Yep.
They've never made a box that I fit in, and this is no different. And
Yeah.
my story is similar. Timing was 2015 to 16. I did 17 months. It ended up being more, but 17 months in prison itself. I did 5.5 months in county, and then went upstate for a year and did a drug program, then did a rehab for 2 months after that, then a halfway house for 6 months after that, and then it was 6 more months of it was a drug program, was called SIP, State Intermediate Punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And had I not taken that, I would have gotten a 2 to 4 for burglarizing pharmacies, because
Yep.
I was addicted to perks, mostly, oxycodone, Percocet, but it was really any pharmaceutical, because I would trade it out for months at a time. I would get clean from perks, and I would be
Mm-hmm.
doing Suboxone and Klonopin, or Suboxone and Xanax, or I didn't do methadone, but there was another. It's Subutex, I think, is what it was called.
Okay.
It was like an off-brand of Suboxone, but it was always pharmaceuticals that I got off on.
Yep.
I was into lean a lot for a time. The promethazine with oxycodone in it, the
Right.
liquid
Right.
cough syrup. I did that for a while, and all that shit led me to prison. And just like you, when I was there, it was much different than I had ever anticipated. I had been arrested many times as a juvenile, but I never went to jail or even juvie as a juvenile. I did actually. I got kicked out of my high school and got sent to an all boys alternative school, but I just went to school there. So, I took a bus there, and it was a sweet gig all around, even though they're in the news now and being sued, and they got shut down because of the way they handled the kids. They would literally
Yeah,
throw them through the walls, and they bragged about it often then, but it was just, regular hat to us while we went there, but nothing like
sure.
that ever happened to me. So, it was a rude awakening to find out how the prison system works. So what was it for you that was, that kicked everything off? Like, how did this? I've heard your story somewhat, but how did? Why don't you walk my audience through a little bit of how you went through the situation?
Sure. You mean like what I did to get arrested and then what brought me in there?
Yeah,
And okay.
right, and how all that occurred
Yeah,
after
sure.
that.
Yeah, sure. And I don't, man, I don't mind talking about it. I know it's a touchy subject, and I know that, societal norms have put a taboo around talking about stuff like that, but that's why I talk about it as openly as I do. Um, because offenses of a sexual nature, especially, have that political hot button attached to it.
Right.
And it's used to generate that fear and that anxiety towards a group of people for zero reason whatsoever. I mean, it's literally things that 99.9% of the population do on just about a daily basis, just depending on what state you're in, or even what county or what city or whatever it might be. You could be arrested for doing it, and you might not even know that you were doing something wrong. So I was caught up in an online sting in 2014, and I was arrested for enticement by electronic communications. It was an undercover officer who was pretending to be a 15-year-old girl. So, unfortunately, one of my saving graces through this whole thing was that I never went to do anything. I never met anyone, never touched anyone. I don't have a victim, which is what makes my case a little unique. But I still did it. I was there. I had the conversations. I don't know if you've ever been in online chat rooms or even just online period, but everybody pretends to be something else. A lot of people will use online as kind of that escape from the real world, which I was doing at that time. So my attitude was kind of like, dude, if you want to pretend to be a 15-year-old girl, whatever gets your rocks off, man, I don't care. So that was my attitude towards it. But they decided they wanted to make an example of me. And that was when it all started. My world came crashing down. I was driving to work on a Friday, and cop cars come flying from everywhere, pull me over, handcuffs, read my rights, the whole nine. Man, there was like 8-10 cars. It was totally overkill. And it was kind of at that moment, I was like, what the hell is going on? What did I do? They told me why I was arrested. And of course, in the back of my mind, I'm like, wait, that's not the whole story though. Hold on a second. This isn't what happened. And then that started I think it was about 9 months of dealing with the legal system, the court system, and how, man, manipulative it is, and not in your favor. Like that was what blew me away. I got an attorney pretty quickly. My family helped me out with that because I had no clue what to do. My world was crashing down around me, and I could barely function. I'm just trying to recall. So I remember sitting down and meeting with the attorney. And now looking back on it, I can fully appreciate his demeanor and his attitude and how he treated me, because they never treated me anything less than a person. He always treated me with respect, never treated me any differently. And he was explaining the process to me very calmly and rationally, for better or for worse. And I remember talking to him one day and just having him go, I know that this seems like the end of the world, but years from now, when you're sitting on your porch in a rocking chair, drinking a lemonade, this is all going to be like a speed bump on the road of your life. This is not the end. And I just remember laughing, like, bullshit, you're not in my seat, dude. This is horrible. How am I ever going to come back from this?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'll never forget when finally they weren't, I wasn't allowed to see my kids because no contact with anyone under 18, blah, 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 which is so loosely worded. Like I didn't know what to do. Like, I'm not supposed to go to the grocery store because the clerk could be 16 or 17. Like, what does that mean? And that was one of the things that was very eye-opening for me, was how the laws are written in such a way that they can get you for whatever they want at any time, just depending on who's pulling the strings or what the agenda is by the county attorney, by the governor, by the mayor, whatever it is. So that was eye-opening. Man, I remember going to court to ask for permission to see my kids, which, I mean, that was just bizarre as all hell, having to go and say, hey, can I at least see my kids? And I remember the prosecutor, even, like, this blew my mind. Even the prosecutor was in my favor. He stood up and he was like, I mean, we've been through all of his stuff. We've combed through every electronic device he has. We've been through everything. I mean, other than this one thing, there's nothing else on this guy. So, I mean, if you want to let him see his kids, whatever. And I was like, shit, that was from the prosecutor. When we left, my wife looked at me and went, that's not what they told me when they arrested you. And I was like, that's what I've been trying to tell everybody for these past however many months. Like, when they dragged me out, they put an article in the newspaper, did all kinds of different stuff. And they made me out to seem like I was running some child porn ring out of my basement. I mean, they really did a number on me good. And my wife was there firsthand to hear that and to see that and to be able to go, hold on, that's not what they told me. But nobody ever reported that stuff. Nobody ever went back and went, oh, hey, that story we did on this guy? Look, here's the rest of the story. We should probably fill you in so you've got all of the sides here to be able to make an educated decision and assumption. So that was kind of another real eye-opening situation to me, was how the legal system just worked hand in hand with the media. It was, whatever was reported was so very skewed that I always walked out. I always read it or looked at it and I was just like, you're not lying, because what they're saying is technically true, but it's lies of omission. It's the stuff that they don't tell you that's the real lie. That's the tricky part. It's hard to catch them. You can't say that they're lying because they're not. They're just not telling you everything. So, and that's not just for me. I mean, that's anything that comes out, newspaper, radio, TV, whatever it might be, anything that you're seeing reported, stop and think, hold on, what's not being said here? That's the bigger case there.
Right. Yeah. Everything has context, and I know with me, I was front page of the newspaper, or the website, because of what I did. It was a string, and it was an active investigation for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So they wrote up a front page article, and all they did was copy what the police were saying to me. So, as far as that goes, they just took the police's word as truth, and it wasn't all true. In fact, I was super fucking high when I got arrested, and I had to correct the police officer's spelling. When they have you sign. So he wrote everything down. He goes, "Is this all correct?" And I'm like, he had some spelling error. So I'm high as shit, and I cross out his words and write them correctly for him. Like, no, this is the way it's done.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you. So what happened? How did you get caught up in this chat room? Did you think that it was an underage girl? Did you think it was someone who was an adult? What was the circumstances in which you engage in this conversation that led you there?
So I don't remember. I mean, I don't remember exactly what it was that led me into there. It was just emails, chat rooms, like instant message type chats. But it was more of just I'm trying to think of the right terminology for it, but fantasies. But again, I didn't go in there saying, I'm going to find the youngest person I can. Here we go. This person approached me, sent me some messages, and then was like, hey, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but I'm only 15. Is that okay? And everybody lies when they're online, especially in these types of chat rooms. You hear the stories about some dude in his mom's basement pretending to be a 13-year-old girl or whatever it is. I mean, they're totally true. I had no intention of ever meeting up with anyone.
I can understand what you're saying. So, did you have was this a porn addiction that led into this?
Say that again. It cut out just a little bit.
Was this like a porn addiction that led into this fantasy type of
Yep.
situation?
That's where I was just about to go with this. It's taking like your addiction, your drug addiction. The drugs was at some point in time, that was what you started to do to deal with just the stress of everyday life, kind of like an escape from reality, because reality, we're not taught healthy coping mechanisms on how to just deal with life. The system sets it up to where, oh, you have a stressful day, you know what, go to the doctor, get some Xanax, go home, crack a beer, have a wine, take a shot, sit down, watch some Netflix and veg out for a little bit, you'll be good, do it the next day. And I mean, all of those, there's nothing necessarily wrong with any of those, but when you're using those on a constant basis as your means of coping with just day-to-day life, that's when it begins to be a problem, because eventually that's not enough and you need more, and then you need more, and you need more. And so that was my addiction.
Okay, because I can see, I had my porn addictions, and I at one point in time I was into petite women, not underage, but I can understand how you could go from one thing to the next. And like if you're saying that you were only intending on it to be just a fantasy type thing and playing out in your mind, uh, I can see how you could go from one to the next. And, that brings me to the immorality of society in today, in that there are, everything is made to be sexualized.
Right.
Everything. And it is in everybody's face, and it is not handled the way that it should be. The adults are not, it's not an adult thing that's happening from, uh, adults don't talk about sex other than, they're going to talk about how, I got laid last night by the chick at the bar, or, that type of, that's children responses. We don't handle sex or sexuality as adults at all. It's like nobody ever taught anybody, and then everyone dances around it like, oh, I'm being naughty, I don't wanna tell anybody, but I'm so excited and giddy, it's that type of thing that it leads to wander outside of what the norms typically are, what the average type of situation is. So therefore, when we have these thoughts that we realize we probably shouldn't have, then there's no way to address it, because then if we bring up these thoughts to someone like, hey, I'm having these thoughts and I don't want to be having them, but I want to talk to somebody. I can't just keep this in my mind. When we don't have an outlet to say what's on our mind, then that's when it stews in us, and that's when it becomes worse and worse, and we degrade very quickly, and it starts to consume us. For like we were just saying, for me, it was drugs. At different times it was porn for me. There were there were many different things that I got addicted to, and the way that I am, I hit everything full force, and I'm very extreme with when I like something. I can't get enough of it for days, weeks, months, no matter what it is. It just happens to be spiritual stuff now, and love, and
Hmm.
peace, and prosperity, and those types of things. But at one time, it was uh, a very different part of society that I represented in myself,
Yeah.
and I feel that you were probably going through these types of things in your mind if you're, that you don't want to have these thoughts. You don't, and you're saying now, like, obviously you didn't do anything and you weren't planning on it, you said. So, if we have the outlet to say, hey, I'm having these thoughts and I know I shouldn't be, but I'm gonna, someone's gonna be, if I tell someone my deepest, darkest secret, what's going to happen to me? Just
Hmm.
for telling them what's in my mind, they're going to start investigating me and doing, and our fears run wild.
Yeah.
Be-
Oh yeah.
and it all starts with, the immorality of society as a whole, and not knowing how to handle sexual situations in any adult manner for the entirety of society.
Hmm. Well, and there's a couple of other points to kind of go over with this too, because I'm sure that as we're talking about this and as people are listening, there's probably somebody that's like, oh my God, that guy is full of shit. He's a pervert. He's a pedophile. And all these things are going to go off in their head.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the tougher things to really reconcile for myself, because I'm none of those things. It's like, that's, hold on just a second. You're not taking the full context. But now that I know what I know, and I've learned and I've grown from all of this, when someone has that type of a reaction towards me or towards anyone else who maybe has been in this type of a similar situation, it's typically because it's reflecting back something about them that they haven't dealt with and are trying to hide, or just aren't coping with themselves. And typically it's because they're trying to hide something that they've done too, that they know that they shouldn't have done, that they've gotten away with. And it freaks them out because they're like, oh my God, what if that could be me? What if somebody finds out? And they deflect it and point it back at you because they can't handle turning that
I agree with
turning that
that.
light inward.
I agree. Or it's, no matter what, it's undealt with emotion. So even if it
Yep.
is, if it's not something that they did, but maybe something that happened to them as a child, or someone that they knew, but
Absolutely.
however it is unresolved trauma that to
Yes.
have the reaction like that. I mean, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. 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 Totally. And then along with that as well, kind of going back to talking about that addiction, I didn't even realize that it was an addiction while I was in it. You hear people talk about that with drugs and alcohol most of the time, but there's a lot of other things that people get addicted to, and sex and everything that falls under that umbrella is the most widespread because of all the reasons you just talked about. Our society is completely sexualized everywhere you look, from the time that we're kids till the time that we're adults. And we're taught that it's shameful and bad, and to don't talk about those kind of things around here. So we internalize all of it. And so I didn't know, just like an alcoholic thinks, dude, it's just a couple of drinks, I'll be fine. Or, a drug addict might think, I can quit anytime I want. I'm not addicted to it. I just enjoy doing it. I want to do it because I want to do it. Those types of things. It was just, I had no clue. So when I look back on all of this now, and I remember talking to my lawyer about it and having him go, I can honestly say you're the only client I've ever had that had said that to me. But I said, I met a lot of people in an SAA group, Sex Addicts Anonymous, that I was going to while I was waiting with the guillotine hanging over my head. And there were people who, and I'm going to use your situation just to kind of try to put this in the same context so maybe people can start to wrap their heads around what I'm saying. there were people who were online and just, they were porn addicts. They were watching porn. They were consuming as much of it as they could get. And eventually you get bored and you're like, oh, I want to, oh, what's this different category of porn? Eventually that gets boring and you go to the next thing and you go to the next thing. Well, then all of a sudden you stumble across something and you're like, whoa, hold on. I didn't want that. And you delete it off your computer real quick and you move on. But that file or that video or that picture was specifically planted there by the state or by the federal government. And the next thing you know, they're beating your door down for trafficking child pornography on the internet, simply because you were down the rabbit hole. You clicked on the wrong link or the wrong file at the wrong time, and boom, you're done. It happened to so many guys. I heard story after story of that. And I remember looking at my lawyer going, I'm glad I stopped now, because I don't even want to know what could have potentially happened down the road. If this is all I have to deal with, I'm glad it stopped now. I'm glad I know about it now, and now I can deal with it.
Right. Well, and once your morals are skewed, you're bound to do anything. I know for me, right when I got arrested, is that this was my moral mindset that, I had the wherewithal to not drive while drunk. I didn't want a DUI. I didn't want to put that responsibility, but I'm popping perks, I'm popping Xannies, and I'm drinking, lean, so
Yeah.
I'm passing out at the wheel anyway. And, but my morals, I didn't drink alcohol because I'm like, oh, I don't want to get a DUI, so the morals of somebody in that, once you're in that predicament, you don't know what you're bound to do. So I agree with you that, good thing you got caught doing what you were doing when it was something light. And I do agree with you that if, as you say, the cop approached you, pretending to be someone else, you were engaged, someone engaged with you, and then they pretended to be someone else, that's a little bit different than you going to look for that type of thing. So it is all about context as well.
Yeah,
So
totally.
yeah, so I mean, I understand your point of view, and I can understand people being upset. For me, I talked about it on my podcast, between, I don't know when it started, 5, 6, 7. This is suppressed memories, but I had a friend who's no longer with us. He was my age, and he was sexually doing things to me at that age, and I found out since that it was because he was having things done to him by an adult, and then he was doing it to many children around the area. So I can see how that happens in many different neighborhoods, and a lot of people grow up with this trauma and they never talk about it, and it's their deepest, darkest secrets. And for me, like for me, so many people suppress the memories, and then when this type of situation happens, people, they they want to all of a sudden take out all of their frustration, and because that hurts so much, that pain of what they remember is so painful, that they just want to hurt anything that reminds them of that thought. And it's, in order for someone to go from a hardcore pedophile, will say, someone to go from that to not being a pedophile anymore, there are, and I'm not saying this is pertains to you, but I'm saying way further, to the very most extreme. In order to heal that person, they have to go through all the stages of understanding and realizing and going all the way back. So we have to be able to speak on it, and there has to be some way, and I know that a lot of people aren't going to like this, but there has to be some way for people to speak their minds when these types of things come up. I had a guy become a pretty good friend of mine, Clay, on the show, and he's very open with what happened to him, and he's very open with, he's one of the most confident people I have ever talked to, and he's very sure of himself, and he he understands how he used to be and now how he is, and how he got, how the things affected him, and he's very open with himself. And he made me realize uh, that I needed to, uh, I don't know how to put it, but to shore up myself in every aspect of myself, essentially.
Hmm.
That I had to be okay with everything, no matter what it is. I had to be okay with it in order for me to be at peace, because I saw he was so much at peace that, it really helped me learn that I had to be okay with everything that happened. And in order for me to be okay with everything that happened with me, I have to then, thereon, I have to be okay with everybody, with everything they've ever done, because they're all a reflection of me.
Yeah.
So, and it's very hard to understand that. And there's horrible people in this world, and I haven't murdered and raped and pillaged and done all these horrible things, but still, in some sense, that is a reflection of me. So,
Hmm.
we are all in this pool, and we all have sinned differently, and we cannot judge someone for sinning differently than us. We all have to learn to love ourselves completely first and foremost, and then love each other with that same loving understanding, and seeing how someone could end up in a situation and not just assume that that person has always been that situation, that something led them down there, and then and that's how it happened. It's not just
Yeah.
one day. It's not like, it just doesn't work that way. People are led into things and then led out of it.
Yeah. And I think one of the most eye-opening things, it was frustrating at the time, uh, but now I can appreciate it because it helps me to get some context around everything. I can't tell you how many times I would have guards, um, when I was in a changing room or, alone with them or something, dressed down, whatever it might be. And they would say, so, what are you here for? And I would tell them, and they would go, that's it. And I'd go, yeah. And they go, shit, dude, I've done so much worse than that. I just never got caught. And that was the running theme. And I talk about that a lot on my show because it goes back to that, if someone is pointing the finger at you, trying to say, oh, look at how horrible that person is, look at what they did, the odds are they're trying to deflect the view from themselves because they've done something just as bad or worse. They just haven't gotten caught. And that thought of getting caught freaks the shit out of them. So
I agree with that as well.
man, it blew my mind how many. I remember I had my first case manager when I was in D&E. D&E is the Diagnostics and Evaluation Center. It's kind of like the Grand Central Station of the Nebraska Department of Corrections. You go there, they give you your points depending on, what your crime is, what your life, all of these different factors that they bring into it. And then based on your points, they say, oh, well, you're going to go to this facility, or you're going to go to work release, you're going to go wherever it is. And I remember sitting down with the case manager. I'd only been there, I don't know, a couple weeks. And he's going, okay, so, tell me about your childhood. Do you have a job? Do you have your wife? Just going down the list. And he's like, so tell me about your charge. And I tell him, and he's like, he's digging for something. He's like, did you ever have sex with anyone underage? No. What about animals? No. What about S&M? Like, no. He's like, why are you here? Like, you fucking tell me, dude. I don't know. Like, I was home 2 weeks ago and now I'm here and you're telling me I shouldn't be. What's going on? But it was because, first of all, it's so prevalent. Like 70% of the population within the Department of Corrections has some kind of sexual offense on their record. Something. They're all sex offenders.
70%? Wow, that's a high
Yeah.
number. I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
it's insane. It's insane. But it's because the laws are getting so out of control that there's a guy this is the perfect example. I use this as the example because I actually met the guy So I can speak to this and go, no, he's real. It's not an urban legend. There's a state park that's not too far down from me, outside of Omaha. It's right in between Omaha and Lincoln. It's called Mahoney State Park. It's a big getaway spot. They've got cabins, they've got fishing and zip lines and all that stuff. So people go there a lot, especially during the spring and summer and fall when the weather's nice. And there was a guy who was waiting in line to go to the bathroom, and the line was insanely long because it gets really busy on the weekends, and he really had to go. So he left, broke away from the pack, and he went off into the trees because it's a state park. There's forests, there's trees, there's all kinds of different stuff, far away from everyone. There was an undercover officer who was also waiting in the line that saw him go off and thought it was suspicious, followed him, saw the guy peeing in the bushes way away from everyone, and that guy got arrested for exposing himself in public, and he is now registered as a sex offender because he went pee in the frickin' trees. That's how out of control some of this stuff is. So when people hear the term sex offender, they immediately have been programmed to have it trigger some kind of monster in their mind that they then picture you as. But
Well,
the
SVU's
reality,
been on for what, like 25 seasons or something?
yeah,
One of the most popular shows. Why is
yep,
that?
exactly. But the reality of it is, it's just, first of all, it's politicized. People use it to run on their record. Look how tough I am on these sexual offenses. And so they just keep creating more and more ways to make things illegal. I met a few guys who were 19 dating a 17-year-old and got arrested for sleeping with an underage girl. They're like, they're 2 years apart. They call it the Romeo and Juliet law, blah, 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 whatever. They're still kids. Like, where is this all of a sudden magical line that says one day I'm 17, the next day my birthday, it's 18. Oh, it's okay now. Why was it okay today, but not yesterday? They blur the line of common sense too often. And then you've got this 19-year-old kid whose life is severely handicapped from that point forward, because now he's a 19-year-old kid with a prison record on the registry. I mean, the deck is just stacking up against this poor kid. And he's back inside. I mean, I tried my best to keep in touch with him when he was out, but you can't take it. One of my good friends who I bunked with went out to a bar and met up with a girl, went back home. You assume, oh, we're in a bar, somebody must have carded her, she must be of age, it should be fine. Nope, turned out she was underage. She lied about her age. He got 10 years. It just, all of this stuff, people don't understand the context behind all of it. And you have this large, ever-growing segment of the population that's just considered a social pariah for no reason whatsoever, other than we don't want to deal with our own internal trauma, with our own internal shit. So we're just going to stuff them over there so I don't have to look at it anymore.
Right. And I want to put it on. You were saying your friend, 19 years old, had a 17-year-old girlfriend and got in trouble. And now he's reoffended or whatever has occurred. So let's talk about how difficult it actually is to not reoffend, to not go, to not go back, and why it's important that we aren't charging people and locking them up and putting them in these situations at an early age. Why is it important to make sure that we keep them out of this situation as far or as long as we can? We try not to put them in there. Like, what is the I can't even say the word.
Recidivism?
Yeah. What's the recidivism in America? Do you know?
In America, I don't know, because it varies from state to state. Looking
true.
at it overall in America wouldn't be a fair way to look at it. You would need to go state by state, because each state handles its own prison population differently. But like in the state of Nebraska, it's about 33%. So 1 out of every 3 people is going to reoffend and go back inside.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I was listening. I just had to
You're fine.
unplug something. You said every 1 in 3 in Nebraska
1 in
will
3.
go
Yep,
back.
33%. 1 out of every 3, which is, I mean, if you think about it, that's insanely high.
Yeah.
31 out of every 3 people that's in the Department of Corrections, which, by the way, Nebraska has the second most overcrowded prison population in the United States of America.
Hmm.
And that means that 1 out of every 3 of those people there's already too many in there to begin with, according to the state law, they're going to go back.
Yeah.
It's a revolving door. So when you talk about the importance of recidivism and removing some of these barriers when people come back out, when they come into reentry, especially these young kids, we've already talked a little bit about it, how society in general, like we don't cope very well with just about anything. Our coping skills, our healthy coping mechanisms are very, very lacking. Fortunately, one of the plus sides of COVID, I think, over the year 2020 is that it helped everybody to kind of refocus on things like that, because everybody had more time on their hands. More people are exercising, more people are meditating, more people are doing yoga, they're doing self-care. So it's shifted a little bit. This is just my personal opinion. But as a whole, you have so many people that just don't handle stress. And when they get stressed out, or when some kind of adversity raises its head, they fall apart. And when they fall apart, they don't like that feeling. So you look to whatever it is to get rid of that feeling, or to feel better, or to numb it. So it's video games or cell phones. I mean, the cell phone addiction nowadays is huge. I have to be careful with how much I'm on my phone because of what I do and how busy I am. I'm always on my phone, and I have to very consciously push it away. But the studies are out there talking about all the effects of it. I know a lady that I work with at a volunteer organization here called Rise that I've talked about on the show. Her son very seriously tried to commit suicide because of his online addiction.
Hmm.
Like it caused more mental problems than it actually helped, because your coping mechanisms are just gone when you use the computer or the cell phone. Just it numbs your brain and it numbs your senses, and you don't feel the way that you normally would. So you've got these 19-year-old kids who are already hampered as far as coping mechanisms, because the generation before them didn't do a very good job of it. And then you've got like the baby boomers, who the overall attitude of the baby boomers is, we'll just go to work, just get up. Doesn't matter how you feel, get up, keep going. Yes, there's a time and place for that, but at some point you have to stop and go, something's not right. What do I need to do differently? Nobody asks that. So you get this 19-year-old kid who makes a stupid decision. He's still an adolescent. He's still technically a teenager, makes a stupid decision, and we're going to drop the hammer on him and hamper him now for the rest of his life.
Right.
Because now when he gets back out into the community, not only does he have to deal with the sideways looks from everyone, or the adversity, just straight out hostility and adversity that you face from people who just think that you're a piece of shit and want to tell you all about it. Then if you can deal with that and surround yourself with a community of people who are at least supporting you, now you've got to find a place to live. Try doing that with a record and or being on the registry, and tell me how easy that one is.
Right.
Then,
And we take it to how they take care of you in jail. So say you're 19 and
yep,
everything isn't going so well in your life right now, and you just graduated high school, and maybe you're getting in fights with your parents and they're kicking you out, or whatever your home situation is. Maybe it's not the best, and then you go to jail for something minor.
yep,
And then you see you're not getting bitched at, like
yeah,
you were when you were at home. You're not getting kicked out. You have 3 meals every day. You have a structured life. maybe it's not so bad. I got a TV in my hut. I play cards. I got friends in here. We can talk about whatever.
Yep.
It very much it becomes like, oh, okay, I could get used to this.
Yeah. Yeah. They call it institutionalized. You get
Right.
institutionalized. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you come out, you're already having trouble finding a place to live, you finding people to hang around with. And then even if you do, I mean, odds are you're going to be hanging around somebody who's in the same spot that you are, and you're just going to feed off of each other's negativity and not push each other to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got to find a job. And those are extraordinarily challenging to find, other than like McDonald's and Taco Bell. But again, one of the good things that COVID has brought about is the fact that minimum wage don't do it anymore. I mean, you can't survive on minimum wage. So you've got a 19-year-old kid who, you nailed it. Their parents probably pushed them. They were probably, most of the guys that I met were drinking and smoking weed or doing whatever kind of other drug. They get inside, that stuff's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't get clean because
Nope.
it was everywhere. And then they get back out and they immediately are just like, this sucks. Why would I want to try this hard? Like, it is so unbalanced. We want them, we say we want them to do the right thing and to live on the straight and narrow and be a productive citizen, but we make it so impossibly difficult for them to do that. It's so much easier to just be like, well, fuck it. I'll go back to selling drugs, or I'll go back to stealing, or I'll go back to robbing cars, whatever it is.
Life is
and
hard
they go
as
right
shit.
back to it.
Yeah, life is super hard. And if you aren't happy, if you don't like being alive, there comes certain times, and it's not even that you're suicidal, but there's
You're
certain
just
times,
unhappy.
yeah, and you're so unhappy that you don't really care what happens. And it's not that you're suicidal, like I was saying. It's not like you're homicidal. It's just like, I just want to have fun. I don't really give a fuck about consequences. I just don't want to deal with life.
Mm-hmm.
And I see my parents, doing this, working their ass off for what, and then you're
Right.
like, but
And they're
and it,
miserable doing it. Why would I want to do that?
right. So people just look at it. They want to have the easiest path, and once you go, obviously with the statistics, once you go, it's so much easier to go back. It's so hard to climb out, and
Totally.
and I want to talk about you and your story real quick. So, how you climbed out. I heard you. I think it was on the Deep Share podcast
Mm-hmm.
and you were talking about that. I forget what his name was, but the life coach that you ended up working with.
James Arthur Ray. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us how that all happened for you?
Yeah. So I'll take it back a little bit further, and I'll hit the high level version to bring us to that point. So
Okay.
with my 18 months when I was inside, I expected to be going home on probation. So when I went into court for my sentencing, I'd already pled, which they bullied me into doing. It was, look, you either plead guilty or we're going to charge you with another offense, which has a mandatory minimum of 5, blah, 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 all this stuff. So, I mean, then you sit down and you look at the numbers, and do I want to have to do 1 or 2, or do I want to have to do 5? It just becomes a numbers game at that point.
Right.
I didn't plead guilty because I was like, yep, I did it. Go ahead and sentence me, officer. I pled guilty because it was the only option that I had that made sense. But they told me that, well, my lawyer, they told him that, look, if the kid pleads guilty, there's nothing else on his record, we'll go ahead and we'll recommend probation. And they didn't do that. They flat out lied to me and my attorney. And so the next thing
public
you know,
defender or an attorney?
No, my attorney, not the prosecutor, the county attorney,
right,
lied to my attorney.
No, but I was saying, did you have a paid attorney or
paid attorney? Yep.
Oh, well, okay.
Yep. Paid attorney. Yeah. And I mean, even he told me, he's like, I maybe I misunderstood them. He's like, but I don't think so. This is what they told me. I don't know what's going on. So I'm let out in handcuffs, and that's, I mean, the end of my world. I mentally just crashed. I was done. It was so hard for that 9 months anyway. I lost best friends who I still to this day haven't heard a word from. I just talked about it on my recent show that's coming out this week.
Okay.
I mean, the social aspects of, I lost my church. I can't go back to the church that I had been a member of for however long because they're just a bunch of dicks about it. I mean, it's just so much, the list goes on. And that was just like the nail in the coffin. That's I'm done. And I went to D&E and I got put in, I don't remember the room. I think it was 24. It was room 24 in pod 1. And if it wasn't for Mackenzie, I never would have made it through those first few days. That man kept me going and kept my perspective and was the friend that I never knew I needed.
Is
And
that
I
a
would
celly
not
that
be
you
here.
had?
Huh?
Was that a celly that you had?
Yep, that was my cellie, Mackenzie. To this day, I still keep in touch with him because I was there for 6 weeks. And in that 6 weeks, I was like, you are my new best friend for the rest of our lives. I was like, you have no idea what you did for me. So he got me through that. And then they moved me to Phelps County. The prison system is so overcrowded that they have to pay the county jails to house prisoners because there's nowhere else to put them. So I got stuck in a county jail, which was pure hell on earth for like the first month. It was god awful, horrible. You're put in this room together and nobody leaves. You don't get out. You don't go. My bunk was right here. The bathroom was right there. The day room was right there. It was just a big L shape with a bathroom on it. And we were all in there. And most of my experience overall was not what you see on TV. You know, you think that, oh, people that have a sexual offense, you know, they get beat up in prison and they're looked down. And yes, a little bit, but not so much. They gave me shit for quite a while, that first month that I was in there. But if you just treat everybody with respect, the respect was paid back eventually. And so, yeah, the second half of the 2 months that I was there wasn't as bad. It was okay. I was like, okay, I'm stable. I've got my feet underneath me. And then they moved me again. And they kept moving me. And every time I would get stable, they'd move me and throw me into somewhere new again. And I would just fall right back down again. And so then I went to NSP. And if it wasn't for Sam, never would have made it. Again, I was carried through this whole way by people who were put there to help me through it. I have no doubt about that. You can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it the creative force, whatever you want to call it. These people were put there to help me get through. And I was put there to help them get through in many cases too. So I was there for another 2.5 months, maybe. And that wasn't so bad. Nobody really cared there. Like nobody asked, nobody's like, oh, what did you do, man? What did you tell us about? Nobody cared. Nobody asked. Nobody talked about what they did. Just a freaking 100 bunk beds in one room. And it was just loud and it was obnoxious. And it was just horrible trying to get through it. Then they moved me again to OCC, Omaha Correctional Center. And by that point, I was just like, oh, whatever, they're going to move me again. Here we go. Mm-hmm. And then they moved me into J3B6 C upper. And that was where I met some of my new absolute best friends. So my bunkie was Jared. And Jared, I remember, came walking into the room and big smile on his face. And he shook his hand. Nice to meet you, man. Oh, good to see you, bunkie, blah, blah, blah. And we were talking just later that day, and I was just fucking miserable, you know. And I'll never forget him saying, hey, somebody told me, what if you could trade 3 years of your life. And on the other end of that 3 years, you would have the happiest, most productive remaining years of your life ever. Would you trade those 3 years? And I was like, I mean, that's a really good point. And he said, right. So think about it that way. And I was like, yeah, that makes really good sense. Okay. And that was kind of when my mindset started to shift a little bit.
Hmm.
And then I met Sean Bina, who I've talked about on the show before too. Sean was a founding member of the 7 Habits of the Inside, which is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey's book and program. It's specifically tailored for prisons. So he was one of the founding members. He had done like 4 numbers. He was in for, I think it was 16 years, but that was the number that he finally said, okay, I'm done. I'm not that person anymore. I'm going to change. I'm going to be completely different. And he did. And he mentored countless individuals to change their lives as well. And he and I got to be really good friends. So I fed off of him quite a bit. And so as time went on, when I'm in the remaining 11 months that I'm there at OCC, I was surrounded by people who were just really productive. Like really, it was all about lifting each other up. That's where the end of my show, when I say that quote, when I say, keep your head up, don't let them get you, that was from OCC. I was walking across the yard one day. I don't even remember what for. I don't know if I was going to a program, if I was going to work. I don't know. I was walking across the yard and I had my head down. I was looking at the ground. Guy passing by me goes, hey, keep your head up, man. Don't let them get you. And I was like, yeah. And I put my head. That was the kind of atmosphere that we all had there. So I was working in the library, and Morton, one of the best people I ever met inside. You know, the vast majority of people that work in the prisons are just there to do their job. They don't really care about you one way or the other. They're not out to get you, but they're not really there to help. Then you've got your small percentage of the people that they're going to get you. They are trying to get you riled up so they can write you up for something. They love exerting the power. They're going to get you. And then you've got the other small percentage on the other end that wants to help you reform your life. And that was Morton, who was the librarian. So she would bring in books for donations all the time. And she was really big on the self-help books. Her attitude was, if you have time, you should be using it productively. And so we tried to tell her a couple of times, we're like, Morton, nobody's going to read these books if we put them out for advertising. And she was like, I don't care. They need to be out there so that they see them. I was like, okay, you know what? That makes sense. I respect that. Okay. So one day she brought in this box of donations, and I was cataloging all of them. I'd get them entered into the computer and put the sticker on it and tape it up and put it on the shelf. And one of them was this book with this guy, like his arms crossed, and he's kind of like looking up at the camera with his big cheesy grin on his face. And it says Harmonic Wealth. And I looked at it and I was like, Morton, this is the cheesiest looking book I've ever seen. Nobody is going to read this. And she was like, just put it out. All right. So I got it into the system and I put it out, and a couple of weeks go by and I finished up whatever book I was reading at that point. And I went back into the library to grab one. And I was like, man, what am I going to read now? What should I do? And that book just kind of jumped out at me. And I was like, all right, I'll read the inside and I'll see what it's about. So I opened it up and I read the flaps, and just kind of reading that, I was like, all right, well, maybe there's something in here that I can get out of this. All right, let's take a look at it. All right, I'll give it a shot. And so I took it back and I started reading it, and it blew my world wide open.
Yeah.
He answered questions that I didn't even know I wanted to ask yet, talking about the nature of the universe and quantum physics and how everything is frequency and vibration and all of this, the law of attraction, and just bringing it all in together. And I was like, holy crap, it all makes sense. Oh my God, I get it. And so when I got home, one of the first things that I did was I got a copy of that book for myself, which I still have upstairs next to my bed. And I went online, I found his website, and I got on his Facebook, and I, followed him on Facebook, and I get his daily triple espresso. And I was just like, I want to learn as much from this guy as I can. And so then one night I was sitting there watching TV, and I said, I wonder if I can find like some of his stuff on YouTube. Maybe he's got some videos or something on YouTube. So I jumped on YouTube and I typed in James Arthur Ray, and all of a sudden these video clips of, James Arthur Ray sentenced to state prison in Arizona, James Arthur Ray, 3 dead in sweat lodge incident. And I'm like, this can't be the same guy. Who is this? And I'm scrolling through all of it. Yep, sure enough, same guy. So he wound up being involved in the Sedona sweat lodge incident, which made national news at the time, where he was hosting a retreat, he and his organization at that time, and 3 people wound up passing away during the sweat lodge, which was at the end of the retreat. And the state of Arizona held him responsible for that, and he wound up doing 2 years in state prison in Arizona. And when he got out, he went right back to the personal development arena, doing what he was doing before, but now his eyes were wide open too. So he came at it with a whole different perspective. And that made me just want to learn from him even more, because I was like, well, if there's anybody that can help to teach me how to do this, it's going to be this guy. And so I got a couple of videos, and I saw a couple of things that he did online where he was speaking at different events. And then I had an email come through talking about how he was going to be holding this video for the Prometheus Academy. And he was going to be talking all about it. And, hey, do you want to be a coach like me? Come learn what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. And so I watched it, and then I submitted my application afterwards, and just thinking like, whatever, there's no way this dude's going to get back to me, but I'm going to give it a shot anyway, because you never know until you try. And then the next day I got an email from Bear, his personal assistant, now his wife, saying, hey, James would like to talk to you. And I was just like a giddy little schoolgirl. I was like, oh, we got to get to talk to James. And so we set it up, and I wound up talking to him on the phone and signed up that day to enroll in the Prometheus Academy. And then I spent the next 3.5 years working with him one-on-one, side-by-side, in-person events, out in with Las Vegas, but Henderson, Nevada. 5-day retreats. I spent a lot of time learning as much as I could from him to be a coach. So
did working with him, did that help you get from where you were with the thoughts that you were having before, the things that led you into that chat room? Were you healing those types of things by doing, being with him and learning from him directly? Did that take your mind off of it, and just it was avoided, or did you heal those things that were happening?
So yes and no. It's a complex answer, because the question that you ask has a lot of layers to it.
Right.
The healing started when I got arrested.
Okay.
Because it was cut off. Recognition is the first law of learning and transformation. If you don't recognize that there's a problem, you don't know to fix it.
Right.
That was my recognition moment. That was when the recognition started.
Okay.
And healing is typically painful, because with the work that you're talking about in specific, where you're healing yourself, the inside work, and removing all of the crap that's been piled onto you, the limiting beliefs and the disempowering programs that have been piled onto your unconscious mind, that takes a lot of time, and it's very painful. So that it started off like that so that it could end like this, where I'm at now. I'm not done.
Right.
That healing started then, and it continued with people like Mackenzie It continued with Sam. It continued with Bina. It continued with Jared. And then it continued when I got out. And by that point, I had laid a good foundation to where I was like, all right, I'm not going back to that anymore. I'm well aware of the pitfalls. Now I'm going to do a different life. And so
Okay.
James really helped to guide me down that path to get started.
Right,
The,
because
the healing came with it.
okay, that's what as you're telling the story, you're, very emphatic about the friends that you made along the way, and I'm just sitting there in my head, I'm like, yeah, like you put them there for you to help
Mm-hmm.
you, guide you along your journey, and
Yep.
also you help them, but obviously they made an impact on you, and I'm glad to see that it was something that you recognized right away, that okay, I got to change myself, and maybe I don't know what that is right now, but and you were open to it, and that it started happening right away, and you can see it right now as you're saying it. It's such a linear picture to you, and you understand how you were only ready for the information you received by learning information beforehand first, and it
Mm-hmm.
was a process, just like us all. I did want to say that when you were talking about your story, see, I had a much different type of when I was in prison. See, my county, I was right outside of Philly, and so my county is, or not the one that I'm in now, but the one that I was in jail. It was the most densely populated county outside of Philadelphia County in all of
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania. So it's the second highest, uh, not population, but it's the tiniest county, but it's populated like a city would be. It's
Yep.
just a bunch of small towns. So when we had anyone in for sexual, everyone had to show their papers right away,
Sure.
and there were certain blocks that they kept. You know, anyone with sexual assault charges or anything to do with children, they were automatically sent to PC.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't allowed to be in a general population. And then I took the SIP program, the State Intermediate Punishment. And when I went upstate, the first place you go to is Graterford, and you get classified there. I was only there for like 3 days, get transferred to Camp Hill. Now, when I'm at Camp Hill, when I'm in Graterford, you'll get stabbed there. On intake block, you'll get murdered for using the wrong
Mm-hmm.
phone. If you're not the right race and you try to pick up another race's phone, you're being murdered in the intake room your first day. It doesn't, they don't play any rules outside of jail rules in that
Yeah.
place. I'm only there for 3 days. Then I go to Camp Hill. And by the way, when I was at Graterford, the way that the showers were set up, there was like only 12 showers, and they fill them all up, and it's fucking chaos in there. And
Yeah.
so I didn't shower those 3 days. I didn't know how long I was going to be in there, but I was like, I don't need a shower today, and luckily I was only there for the 3 days. But then I go to Camp Hill and I get put with SIP. So SIP all had to stay together, and because we were short timers, we were even less time than the 1 to 2 years. Well, 1 to 2 years could get out earlier than us, but our max sentence was less than the 1 to 2 would have been.
Mm-hmm.
So just in terms of weeks. So we just had to be kept by ourselves. We were an experiment. So what they did was they kept anyone with sexual assault charges, they would put onto our block. So even, and I'll tell you, a lot of people were willing to give up their short stay in order to try to hurt this person who they're being told, just by other prisoners, and maybe by some COs, that this person has sexual assault charges or pedophile charges, something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Even though everyone there was, going to be out within the year, a lot of people, they were ready to give it all up just to, go hurt that person. And,
Yeah.
that's not somebody and for me, I'll say, because I wasn't healed, I didn't even remember my trauma. Like, I was angry the first time that, the story that we were told was that this guy came to the block, that he had, uh, I don't even want to say the words, but it was his niece, and
Hmm.
she was very young. And, my blood just started boiling. And, I look at myself now, I look back on myself then, and, it was very much my emotional response, my feeling that way, my anger, the heat that I felt in me was because I had unresolved issues in myself that I didn't even remember at the time. But, that is in my mindset, I wasn't healing myself in that manner because I was willing, maybe it was only for a few seconds, but I had the thought like, I want to go fuck this dude up. And, if I go do that, like what's the course that my life goes on from that point on, and what's it for, and it's so when you were saying, for you that they didn't, nobody really asked for that. So with mine, it was totally not that experience. Anybody,
Sure.
they were walled off. I mean, it was made as violent and racist as possible,
Yep.
especially, in the Philly area, that they separate you by age, by race, and it's just it can get very, very violent very quickly because of the way that the prison guards, the COs, the wardens, the whoever, all the administrators, the way that they have it set up in there is for the most violent, the most tyrannical prison inmates are the ones who are making the rules for the rest of the prisoners, and the guards are just there to make sure they don't kill each other. If it's somebody that's paying us money, keep him alive.
Yep.
But otherwise, maybe you take 2 minutes when you should only take 10 seconds to get to there.
Yep.
It was very, it was very dirty, in that there was so much drugs and alcohol was being made all the time, and you know there they shake down your cells, and then certain people who are supplying everybody with everything are having their cells shaken down, and nothing's happening to them, but other people are getting, booked for it. And it's like, you know, what's going on here? Are the guards protecting this guy? At one point, Beanie Siegel, the rapper, he was in the same county jail as me, uh, and he had a DVD player and a PS4, and they don't have that on commissary. Like, how did he
Yep.
get that? And it's you know, this whole all the COs are, not all of them, but like you said, there's a percentage that are very dirty, and they don't really mind how they get their money. They don't really mind because they look at everybody in there as the scum of the earth, that they're better than them, that,
Yeah.
I'm above you, I uphold the law and you're just some scum. While, what they're doing is a 10 to 20 if they get caught doing it, and
Yep.
like you were saying, so many times that, people just don't get caught for what they do. So then they think they have this moral high ground
Yep.
where they say, I'm better than you. They act like they're a much better person than you are. And it takes a lot to start to understand just how wrong we were. I take it for myself. I take it way back before I ever went to jail, and how wrong my mindset was just on the regular, everyday. The things that I would think that would run through my mind, how ill I actually was. And that's just the typical person, is having those things run through their minds, uh, that shouldn't be. And, this whole world that we live in is very ill. And, it's not, it's so easy to judge somebody else for what they did wrong when you're not on trial. But if
Hmm.
you have to then throw up your own stuff against them, then it's all of a sudden okay. That's why I try my best to be non-judgmental. As Jesus is, all loving and non-judgmental. That's what my goal is to become. So, I give credit to you for how brave you are for having a podcast and speaking your truth out there, because it's not a very easy thing to
Nope.
do, to put yourself in this light. And
Yeah.
it does take a lot of courage to do that. So hats off to you for
Yeah.
coming clean, coming true to you, and now you're helping numerous amounts of people, right? I mean, I know that you're working with people to. You invited me to, help do a life coaching class that you're giving,
Yep.
and what are some of the other things that you're doing nowadays?
So one of the first things that I did when I got out, I don't know if you want to call it an epiphany or a vision or a revelation, whatever you want to call it. I was sitting in the library working with my cellie Jared, who we both worked in the library, so we were together all the time. And he was getting ready to get out. He was, I don't know, 3 weeks out, maybe 4 weeks out. And I was just a few weeks after him. So it was super exciting for both of us, because once he left, I was like, well, shit, I'm right behind you. But he was talking about how frustrating it was. He's like, I don't have a place to live. He's like, I've got my mom and my sister who are helping me, and they're going to pay the first month and the deposit, and I still can't find a place. And you're inside. So now everything is done online. You have to fill out all these applications online, go to the website, fill out this, request for the background check. You don't have access to that stuff when you're inside. So what are you supposed to do? You can't. There's nothing to do. Your options are a homeless shelter, which the homeless shelter here in, at least in Omaha, I don't know what it's like in a lot of other places, but they still charged like $250 to hold a spot if you were going to come out from prison to go over to the homeless shelter. It's not free. Or you can sleep on somebody's couch and crash there for a while. But there's numerous studies that show that each time you couch hop, your odds of recidivism increase by like 70%. So you overstay your welcome here, then you bounce over to this person's couch over here. You just increased by almost 3/4 your odds of recidivism, which in Nebraska, it's already 33%. So that jumps astronomically from there.
Right.
So there's no options. So I was sitting there thinking, and I was like, well, what if there was some way that you could come out and the housing was like provided for you, and the rent just kind of gradually increased over the first few months to give you some time. He was like, holy crap, that would be amazing. That's what I need. And so I started Reentry Resources. It's a nonprofit organization. We got the 501c3 about 2 years ago now, with the goal of just that, providing housing options for individuals who are reentering the community from correctional institutions. Plain and simple. Housing is the number one barrier to reentry. The arguments can be made back and forth of whether it's jobs, whether it's housing, blah, blah, blah. It's housing. And I say it's housing simply because if you don't have an address to put on an application when you go to apply for a job, you can't fill out the application. You have to have a place to live first before you can do anything else. And the odds are stacked so far against you with the background, potentially the registry, and then you throw the finances on top of it. I mean, how much does it cost to pay for a first month and a deposit and utility setup? And a lot of these guys that come out still have restitution. They've got child support, maybe back child support that they're having to work with. They've got debt that's just waiting for them to walk out the door. So that was kind of my vision. And it took me a couple of years to get it going, because what I was recommending or what I had in my mind was so different. I wavered back and forth. I had people telling me, no, that needs to be a for-profit. No, it should be nonprofit. No, it should be. I went back and forth with that forever. Finally picked a lane, drove in it, and we've got it up and running. COVID hit, which pretty much dried up any funds for the time being. So we have a very, very modest amount, just a few hundred, which is okay. because it still has allowed us to make connections within the Omaha community. So like, for instance, right now I had somebody call me earlier today and say, hey, I talked to Alexis. She told me to reach out to you. You maybe have some housing options. I don't have anywhere to go. Here's my situation. I can at least say, let me send you a couple phone numbers, call these people, tell them I told you, tell them your story. They're willing to work with you. So we at least have that option. And we've helped, I mean, a handful of people. I can't help everybody,
Right.
but I've helped a handful of people that it's worked with. And I say we because the board is also comprised of, it's a very small group right now, but my wife and then my friend Alex, who I've had on the show, who I met when I was in OCC. I recently turned over the executive director role to him because I do not have the capacity to pay enough time and focus and attention to it. And he does. So that was primary focus number one. Number two is the coaching and the podcast, which I really see going hand in hand. You know, I started off the podcast with just doing interviews because I didn't know how my story would be received. You know, I really didn't. That's why I go by Dancing Dave. You know, when I got onto the station, now it's a different story. But when I went onto the station, I'm on the Fringe FM. So I have a podcast, but it's also a radio show. I run on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. on the Fringe. Once it runs, then it hits the podcast feeds from there.
Oh, okay.
So when I was telling Joe, who was the owner and my producer, I was telling him about, you know, my story. And he, of course, knee-jerk reaction. He's like, oh, well, I mean, this could be a problem. And I'm like, well, that's why I'm telling you. I want to just get it out in the air. And he's like, well, I'll still work with you, but, you know, do you have a pseudonym or like a stage name or something that you can use? And I was like, yes, I do. My prison nickname is Dancing Dave. So it fits. It works beautifully. I have no problems using it, but that's the reason for it. So yeah, that first year I did a lot of interviews, which were great. It allowed me to help to tell the stories of people who are not getting the attention that they deserve, talking about a lot of the success stories of people that are in reentry, as opposed to just hearing all of the horror stories on the news that you do. But then at the end of the first year, I ended on a high note with Joshua Ho from Decarceration Nation, who was one of the biggest influences for me even wanting to do a podcast. So I had him on and it was great. I loved it. It was fantastic. And so I was talking to my producer after that and he was like, that was a great show, but man, why don't you ever talk about your stuff? He's like, you know so much and you're such a good speaker. Why don't you ever talk? And I was like, I don't know. Are people even going to want to hear what I have to say? He's like, I don't know. Let's find out. Like, okay, here we go. So I jumped in head first and just kind of started telling my story. And it's been received way better than I thought it would have been. You know, with the topics that I talk about sometimes and telling my own story, I was really concerned that there would be backlash, but there was a lot of people that were like, you know what, I respect that. I kind of like you just did. You know, I respect you for telling your story. It's not easy. It's fucking embarrassing as hell, but it is what it is. If that hadn't have happened to me, I wouldn't be here. So would I go back and change it? I don't think I would, because God only knows what would have happened, you know? So the podcast and the coaching really just goes hand in hand. I've got my day job that I do now too, which is a big piece of the puzzle to me, because as a life and business coach, I'm trying to make myself kind of a 5-tool player, so to speak, for baseball term, where you plug me in anywhere and I'll knock it out of the park. So the job that I'm in now, I worked with one of the owners at the first job I had when I got out, just doing phone sales, selling digital marketing. And it was okay. Like, it wasn't great. We didn't make a ton of money, but I was earning and I was happy where I was at and we had enough coming in. And then that company closed down. And then there was about 6 months that I had like no idea what I was doing. Where I was just kind of sitting at home trying to figure it out. We were still working the residuals off of that job. So there was still money coming in from it. I had some time. And then I was presented with an opportunity to start a business, partner with some business people here in town. And it was a coach that I worked with at that job, a sales coach who he is very uniquely taking sales techniques and combined it with life coaching and has an absolutely amazing training program.
Hmm.
And he does one-on-one coaching with people as well who, maybe he connects with. Well, he and I have stayed in touch. We've become friends. He's become kind of a mentor to me. And so he knows my story. He knows everything, the good, the bad, all of it. He's one of my biggest advocates. And so he was talking to a couple business owners who said, hey, you know what? We're thinking of starting a call center. Would you be interested in doing this? And he said, I know a guy, let me make a phone call first. And so instead of taking that opportunity for himself, he turned it over to me. And it was going great. Like we were crushing it. It was strictly a prospecting call center. The owners were 100% focused on reentry. So they allowed me to just hire as I saw fit. They didn't care about backgrounds. They trusted me to do it. And we were doing fantastic. Our clients loved what we were doing. And then COVID hit and just shut it all down. And then my friend who I had, been working with, he did the website for my show. He's done all my graphics. He owns a digital marketing company here. So I'd still kept in touch with him. And then he'd been trying to recruit me to come to this business, this medical staffing business. And I'm like, dude, the call center's going great. I'm happy where I'm at. I appreciate it. Thank you, but no. And then it came crashing down and he was like, look, I still need people. You have a spot. Why don't you, now is the time. Why don't you just come over now? And so I came over, kind of tail between my legs a little bit. It wasn't as triumphant as I would have liked, but I was their second hire. I was the second person they hired. And so I came in there with feeling like the weight of the world on my shoulders because, well, first of all, they all knew about me and about my criminal past, and he doesn't care. So his wife and one of their friends, coworkers that his wife had worked with, they're primarily running the company. He's kind of like the chief operating officer. So they're all the owners. He was like, Dave's coming in. And they were like, who the hell is Dave? And he was like, I've worked with him. I know him. I want Dave. Dave is coming in. And so they were both kind of looking at me a little sideways. They gave me the opportunity, but they were skeptical until I started producing. And then things were going great. And then, it blew up. Like we've been there a year and a half. I've been working at this organization and we are at like 60 employees now from 5 of us in his basement. We have an office. We're growing so fast. We're getting ready to move into a bigger office space because we outgrew that place in less than a year. So again, as a life and business coach, I have to put into practice what I preach. And so that allows me to do that.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot going on and that you've been helping a lot of different people. I forgot that I did hear you say that you were on Fringe FM. I forgot about that. I should have put that in the intro. But, it sounds like to me that everybody you meet that's given you an opportunity sees something in you and they're like, all right, let me give this guy a chance. And then they like what you do. And that's what I always say with me. It was so hard to get a job at several different times. We could have a whole episode about how difficult it is to get a job with a record. But, I'll just say that for me, I just lost what I was going to say. If anybody ever gives me a chance, if I want something, all I ever need is that chance, because I will turn that chance into, you'll never regret it. In
Hmm.
fact, you'll be so thankful, because it's like investing in Starbucks when there's only, it's just about to open, before
Yeah.
it's only one store. That's what investing
Yeah.
in me is like. If you want to get in on the ground floor, you're going to watch everything grow, because that's just how I am. I go improve myself time and again. So when you're telling me all these things, typically when I speak to people, I'm like, I'm looking for the similarities in their story and my story and the crossover, and so how I can relate to somebody even better.
Hmm.
And the more that you go on with your story, I'm like, man, that I align with a lot of what you're saying in my story, as well as I feel everything on your story, that you know all the people around you are all designed to help you out, and you're helping them out, and it's just amazing. So, do you have any anyone right now that you're coaching? Do you have regular people that you coach, or is that just something that you do, if somebody, you give out your number and someone hits you up, or do you work one on one with people? How's that go for you?
Yep. So I right now I'm just working one on one with a handful of people.
Okay,
I'm
well, that's
able to be
cool.
selective
Right.
about who I work with. That was one of the tougher parts of working with James, where James's target audience is up here. He wants to work with like top performers, where his coaching is called ultimate performance coaching, and it's about making you into just the absolute ultimate best you possibly can be. And I love it. And I'm kind of like, yeah, but there's a whole lot of people that are
Right. That don't fit that
over
bill.
here that don't even know how to perform, period. Like, we need to
Right.
get these people to performance. We don't
Right.
need to be taking all of these people who are already good at it. Microphone broke. We don't need to be taking all of these people who are already good at it and teaching them how to be better. Yeah, there's a place for that, but that's not what I do. I need to find these people over here who think that there's no hope left, and that the system has just crushed them and taken all hope away, and they're never going to have a purpose or a productive life, because that's a lie, and just nobody's ever told them any differently.
Well, it's awesome that you found your niche, because it seems like you recognize right away, like, oh, you're pandering to, not pandering to, but you're going after people who understand you on some level, when we have to help these people understand that there is a level to begin with.
Yeah.
I really I like that, that you saw that, and that you wanted to help those who you were surrounded with for that year and a half in
Yep.
jail.
So I'm very small group of people. My plans are to put together more of like an online coaching program, and to do maybe some videos. But I love the one-on-one interaction, because everybody is so different. Like, there's a few key pieces that people need to know about, like across the board. Everybody needs to know about the difference between the conscious and the unconscious mind. Everybody needs to know about limiting beliefs. Everybody needs to know about how the universe works, like basic things like that. Because once you understand those, then doors open all over the place for you.
Mm-hmm.
And but then from that point forward, everybody's story is so unique. Everybody has different limiting beliefs that they have to overcome. They have different challenges that they have to, and everybody's got such a unique purpose. Everybody has unique gifts, that it's not a one size fits all. So it's very unique for me, because I was talking to my wife about this the other day. I don't typically stop and give myself kudos, which is, whatever, one of my downfalls, one of my lack, you can call it whatever you want. I don't ever stop and give myself praise or give myself kudos. I should more, stop and reflect on my accomplishments and be proud of those things. that happened to be one of those moments. I said, you know what, let me just stop and think for a second. So I have a bit of a positive problem in that most of the people that I've been working one-on-one with and coaching have all just jumped in feet first and chased their dreams and started their dream business. And now they're like, I'm so busy, I don't even have time. And I'm like, oh, I mean, that's cool. I've got like 4 people now that I've coached, very short time relatively. And all of a sudden they're starting their businesses. Hmm. And like, I mean, it's a great track record for me, but now I'm back to, I've only got a couple of people because now these guys are too busy, I think. But
yeah.
So well, yeah, it's nice. It allows me to be selective. I can work with who I want to work with. I'm not trying to chase down people or market myself. I have the flexibility and the ability right now to find the people that this resonates with and work with them.
Well, that's awesome. And, you know, I just added on my website some mentorship programs myself that where mine's a little more towards teaching people how to meditate, to, you know, I want to break open everyone's kundalini and then teach them how to deal with their shadow that comes out when you break open your kundalini. And, you know, the great chakra awakening, you know, that's what it's all about for me. So, you know, I just started offering these, so you know, I'm looking forward to, and coach is a good word for it, but you know, it's just like to walk alongside people who want, who need a little bit of guidance, and you know, I love helping people, I and I love being there to, you know, when someone needs an answer and I have it, you know, I love being there for them. How did you? So you didn't even have a podcast when you hooked up with Joe from Fringe FM. You started on there.
Mm-hmm. So I listened to Joe's podcast, Lighting the Void.
Okay.
And during that 6 months when I was kind of at home transitioning in between positions, I was sitting down here like on lunch, and I listen to podcasts all the time. And I was listening to podcasts like I said, Decarceration Nation and things like that. And one of the things that caught me with those was there was a couple episodes that Joshua Ho did where he would bring on like a Harvard professor and have them talk about some study that they did on recidivism, or he brought in one of the chairmen of the Innocence Project who talked about like some bail relief fund organization that he had up in New York. And I was like, man, these are really cool, but how does this help Sean, who's coming home after 16 years, like in a month, and has no idea how to find a job or work or a home or a life, and is trying to reconnect with kids who have grown up without their father? Like, it's cool that Harvard professor did this study, but how does that help? Mm-hmm. So the formulations were kind of in my mind. And so then I was listening to Joe's podcast, and during one of his commercial breaks, they said, hey, do you have an idea for a podcast, or do you have a podcast that you need production value with? Well, the Fringe can help. And it was an advertisement. So I was sitting there and I was like, I mean, I got an idea for a podcast. So I sent an email and I was like, I have an idea for a podcast. Here's my information. And about a week later, Joe called and I pitched him my idea. And I said, look, it's talking about like criminal justice reform, talking about the success stories from the system, and kind of mixing in the coaching aspect. So you start with the first half of, okay, here's the topic, or here's the issue, or here's the problem. Now that we've talked about it, what do we do? How do I begin to incorporate this, or what steps can I take? And so on the back end of that, that's the second part to the show is, okay, now that you know this, here's some things to do. Okay. So really just trying to end on a productive note instead of just, there was a couple episodes of shows I listened to where they would talk about a topic and I would just get so riled up. I'd be like, yeah, that's a problem. Yeah. And they'd be like, okay, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk next
Right.
week.
Just
And
the
I'm just left
entertainment value.
with this angry feeling like, oh, what do I do with that? That's not productive.
Right.
So I pitched it to him and he was like, well, that actually might work. That's a good idea. All right. And we just kind of rolled from there. And the next thing you know, I'm on the fringe and I'm going on year 3 now. I think
Oh,
I just
wow.
finished up 2 years. I think
That's awesome.
July began year number 3. And
Well, congratulations.
here we go.
That's do you know Tony Merkel?
No.
No, you haven't met Tony? Okay. You know, that was the first podcast that I listened to that woke me up, and you know, and then I had a conversation with him. It never played. He has so many recordings that it probably got lost in there. I mean, it was like when I scheduled with him, it was scheduling 9 months out. You know, like I
Yeah.
scheduled it from like September and like ended up like it was April or something that we finally spoke. So
Yeah.
you know, he probably has so many hundreds of episodes before mine still.
Yep.
But I was just saying if you know him because he's
No.
on there as well. So you know, this was an interesting episode. I think that we covered a lot here, and I think that you showed that, you know, what you went to jail for, there it wasn't as bad as it can seem, you know, on the paper face value. You know, it isn't what what it may seem like to some people, and it turned your life around, and it helped you not only help yourself, which is the most important, us loving ourselves and healing ourselves and being there for ourselves, but now you're turning around and you're helping everybody, not everybody, but you're helping out so many other people help themselves. And you know, it is, like I said a little while ago, you know, it's very courageous to, you know, be front and center with any crime, especially one that has on the face something that seems like it may be worse than it may have been. So, you know, it takes a lot of courage, and also, you know, it's a very humbling, humbling thing to do, to then turn around and help out prisoners and people that are just coming out. Because I'll say for me, I know that I don't particularly operate very well if I'm around a lot of low vibrational people. So I can't
Yeah.
put myself in that situation. Not that, you know, I want to help everybody, but I can't immerse myself in it because the way I am, you know, I'll be better at it than they are. You know, whatever they're doing wrong, you know, then I'm just going. It just works like that with me. So
Yeah.
so, you know, to be able to stay strong, and not only stay strong, but to lead the way. You know, you have like a torch and you went straight into the cave and you're like, follow me, and you know, helping whoever wants to get out of that darkness. And you know, it's something to be commended for you to help society, help those in society not go back to jail, and not only not go back to jail, but see that there's a whole other side to life that they can change completely if they just change their mindset. And you know,
Yeah.
that's an honorable thing that you're doing now.
No, well, thank you. I really don't even think about it like that. To me, it's just like, I know how many people I met that helped me
Right.
that are in, you know, the same types of situations. There's so many people out there that are just like you and me.
Mm-hmm.
I had this conversation with Joe probably just about a week ago, because, you know, the numbers for my podcast they're solid. You know, the numbers on the show are good. It's nothing to be, I don't know, too excited about. Like, it's in comparison to like Charlie from Macroaggressions. I mean, I'm like small potatoes. I joke with him all the time, and I'm like, I feel like the little dog on Looney Tunes who's bouncing around the bulldog all the time. It's like, I feel like that's me, like bouncing around you guys. So, but I'm not for everybody. Like, I'm not the mass appeal type of an audience like Charlie is, or like Ricky is from the Ripple Effect. Yeah,
Right.
that's not me. I'm speaking to that one person who has a story similar to mine or to yours and is afraid to tell it because they think nobody's going to get it, or they think nobody's going to understand or even listen to them. So that's who I'm for. I'm going to tell my story because somebody else has their story to tell too, and they're just too afraid to do it. You know what? I'll go out and I'll take the heat, and I'll take the beatings, and I'll take the name callings, because it's not that bad. Like, it's really not that bad.
Yeah,
And
you
then
are
they'll see that and it'll inspire them. That's my hope.
right, and you are a specific niche.
Yep.
You know, I cover a vast array of topics on my show. I talk a lot about my life, uh, and well, you know, not all the time with the guests, but you know, I have 13 episodes of me talking about my life and all the things that happened. You know, the first 13 episodes are just me. So, and then you know, I talk conspiracy theories, I talk spirituality, you know, I talk everything. So I could only imagine, you know, if I just condensed it down to try to talk about one specific thing, you know, it's going to be much harder to grab hold of people's attention if they don't relate to it, because people, you know, we only listen to what we resonate with. You know,
Yeah.
if it's, I'm not going to turn on something about ballerinas or, you know, how to sing better, you know, that just doesn't resonate with me. So
Right.
yeah, same idea, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I want to thank you so much for coming on. This was an excellent episode. You know, I learned a lot about you, and I hope that my audience is appreciative of the truth that comes out. You know, my intro is, it starts off saying, "I will only tell the truth," and then the guy's just repeating the word truth. It's like truth, truth, truth. You know, I will only tell the truth. So I love when people come on here and they tell their truth. You know, nothing has helped me more than bringing truth to power by speaking my deepest, darkest secrets. It has empowered me so much because I got it out of me. And, you know, I hope that my audience recognizes that you, you know, came here and you told your story, and hopefully that we can change some minds on how they view certain topics. And it's, you know, especially something like this, it's a hard to talk about, it's a hard to listen to topic. So maybe, you know, people being able to hear it in this sense, you know, I think that it will be pretty well received. That's my hope, and maybe
Sure.
that's my optimism, but you know, that's how I think, you know, that's how I seen it, anyway, from my point of view in this conversation, was that it was a good thing to talk about and to be able to have the adult discussion about it, that you know, these things exist in people in society today, and just because they've never uh, I was going to say acted on, but just because nobody ever knew these thoughts that they had, they all of a sudden, you know, they can point the finger and be like, oh, you know, you're this, and you know that guy might be thinking the same types of things, and it's because of the way society is that he's not gonna go get it out of him. And you know, you have to speak your truth in order to get out those monsters. Like I'm teaching this mentorship program. In order to get your shadow out of you, you have to get it out of you. You have to speak it. You can't let it linger in the cave any longer. Everybody has to let it out. And I'm so glad that you know, you came on here and did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Um, you know, I'll just say that if I worried about what people thought about what I was going to say, I wouldn't be doing this for very
Right.
long. So I really hope that this resonated with whoever needed to hear it.
Yeah, me too. And I hope everybody will go check you out. Do you want to? Well, before I have you sign off real quick, I
Mhm.
always try ending it by asking my guests, what are your um, biggest relaxation techniques, your most helpful relaxation techniques, and the grounding techniques that you use when maybe you get a little angry, maybe you get a little in your head. How do
Mm,
you ground yourself? So, relaxation and grounding. Talk to me about that.
yeah. So I learned a lot from James with the ultimate performance. Um, as far as grounding goes, well, let me kind of take a step back. As far as techniques, you know, diet and exercise is huge. I have a specific diet that my wife and I use that we've tried all kinds of different things and it works really well for us. I know how differently I feel now as opposed to when I was eating like crap.
What's your diet?
I'll say that again. It cut out a little bit.
Oh, sorry. What's your diet?
So Dr. Mark Hyman, Hyman, it's a combination. He calls it pegan. It's a combination of paleo and vegan.
Okay.
So it's very healthy fats, lots and lots of healthy fats, lots of vegetables, but every meal also includes an animal protein of some kind, in a 4 to 6 ounce, about the size of your palm, that type of a thing. Low to no carbs. So it's interesting. It's kind of, he takes all of these pieces from like keto and paleo and vegan and he puts them all into this one. And it's a 21-day program that, I mean, you can go to his website. He's got a podcast. I listen to it all the time. I had my wife listen to it. And
What's
that's
his
why
name?
Dr. Mark Hyman,
Okay.
Hyman. It's called the Broken Brain podcast,
Okay.
is his. He wrote a book called The Broken Brain. And anyway, so we followed this 21-day plan, which is meant to like kickstart the ketosis and to kickstart your body into fat burning. So it's eat fat, get thin. And it would, like, we both felt amazing, just absolutely felt amazing. So that's number one. Like if you're eating like crap and treating your body like crap, it's going to be really, really hard for you to relax in any way because you're always going to be burnt out.
100% agree.
Yep. So, I mean, that's number one. Number two, especially at work, the job that I do is, man, it is high pressure. I do not ever stop. Like it's almost 24/7. So I try to follow the circadian rhythm as best as I can, where you work for an hour to an hour and a half, and then you get up and you walk away for 10, 15 minutes. And then you come back for another hour, hour and a half, then you take your lunch. And you try to structure your day like that so that you're not constantly working and pressing yourself so hard. And during those breaks, meditation, just get up and go out for a walk, just go outside, get up and go talk to somebody. Don't take a break and stop working and stay on the computer. Break away from the electronic device and go reconnect with life in some form or fashion. Meditation is a huge one for me. I learned Transcendental Meditation a few years ago, which works fantastic for me. Any kind of mindfulness meditation at all will work wonders if you just give it a few days and kind of get through the initial kinks. Because if you've never done any kind of meditation before, it's going to be really difficult and it's going to feel really hard. It gets easier. Those are definitely my big key points of takeaway. And then two other things that I talk about. I start every show with gratitude. So it's something that I tell my wife, I tell a lot of people, most of my clients that I work with, if they're not already doing it, like start your day with gratitude. Wake up and immediately try to focus on the 3 things that you're grateful for. Just pick 3. And it can be something as simple as, oh, I'm grateful for this pillow. I love the way this pillow feels. I'm grateful. Mine lately has just been very simple. I'm like, you know what? I'm grateful for this house that we have. I'm grateful for waking up next to my wife. I'm grateful that I get to go get my son out of bed now. Like there's a lot. I didn't have that opportunity for a while. So those are the things that I'm grateful for. but there's a lot of studies that are done that show the effect that that has on your brain and on your mindset, where when you focus on what you have, you stop focusing on what you don't have. And you start to realize that you have everything around you that you need. The law of attraction works whether you want it to or not. And if all you're ever focusing on is what you lack or what you think you don't have, that's all you're going to get. You're going to continue to get lack. You're going to continue to get things that you think you don't have. So when you begin to shift that focus, it changes your whole life.
Right.
And at the end of your day, if you just take a pad of paper and just journal, you can do a gratitude journal, you can do a goal journal, you can do whatever you want. You just take a journal and be like, kind of like a diary format. You know what? Here's what happened today. Whatever it is, just get it out.
Right.
Process the day, get it out onto a piece of paper. It's a very literal transfer from your brain through your arm, down your fingertips, onto that piece of paper. And you just, you get it out. And then
energy transfer.
Yeah. If you try it even the first day, if you just try it, you'll pass out. Like, it's the most relaxing thing in the world when you just get all of that crap out instead of laying there in bed and being like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened today. I can't believe she said that about me. Oh, I'm going to have to do this tomorrow. I still have to do. Don't sit there and just let it stir in your head. You're never going to rest.
Right. That's all such great information that you're giving right there, and I hope that everybody listening takes notes, because those things that he just mentioned are all very simple things that can transform your life in major ways if you just do them.
Those are the simple, basic things that you can start right now that will show you immediate results. Like, that's not something that you're going to have to wait months and months and months to be able to feel anything. If you sit down and you do a meditation, you'll know it. You'll feel it. You'll feel the difference. If you eat better today, you'll be like, oh, I don't feel as crappy as I did yesterday. You'll know it right away.
Right. And I do want to say that I heard you say in one episode, like, you said you used to, I'm wording it wrong, I'm just trying to paraphrase here, but
Go for it.
That you used to have to take your kid somewhere. Now you say, I get to take my child to and I love that little transfer of mindset of, oh, I have to go pick up my daughter. Now she's at her friend's house, to, oh, I get to go pick up my daughter at her friend's house.
It's a simple shift. Yep. That was CODIS. CODIS called me out on that. Okay. I was talking to my friend Jason and I said, I got to go get my son now, or I got to go get him to soccer. And he was like, no, Dave, you don't have to, you get to. Right. I was like, oh my God, you're right. Like, such a simple thing. He's like, we didn't have that opportunity for a while, man. Right. You're right. Yeah. You're right. There was a time I didn't get to take my son to soccer, and now I can. That's huge.
Yeah. That really resonates with me too. Yeah. So, why don't you tell the audience where they can find you at and all the different places?
Sure. So you can catch me on the Fringe. It's just Fringe FM. My show runs Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Central Time, pretty much every week. We're in a bit of a transition right now where the station is moving. So it's been a little spotty as far as the new shows coming out, but that's all going to be cleared up here in a week or two, and things will be back to normal. I'm available everywhere you find podcasts. So we're on all the big ones: iHeartRadio, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Amazon. I just got added onto that, picked up too. So it's available anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you don't like podcasts and you prefer the web version, I'm on survivingthesystem.org. That's just a pretty simple website, very short, informational. The archive of all of my episodes is on there as well. And there's a contact me page if you want to shoot me a message and ask me a question, comment on something, tell me to go F myself, whatever you want to do. Twitter at STS the podcast. And I'm on Facebook at facebook.com/survivingthesystem. I know I mentioned this on my show and I mentioned it to you. I try to get back within 24 hours. I'm typically much quicker response than that, but 24 hours just in case if something's coming up. But don't hesitate to reach out. I love to interact with everybody.
Yeah, and just so the audience knows, you answered me right away. I messaged you on Facebook, and maybe less than an hour later, like you said, we started linking up, and you even invited me to tell me about how your little coaching
Mhm.
class that you do, and I, from all things I can tell that you're doing all the right things, and I'm very appreciative of everything that you're doing to help out all of those that you are trying to do as much as you can for as many people as you are. And you seem to be reaching a lot of people. You're in your third year on Fringe.fm. You have these different uh, I don't know what word, different things that are going on to get prisoners, not prisoners, people from prison into
Mhm.
housing, and just everything that you're doing, the life coaching, the going to be with James in Arizona for 3.5 years. You're going back and forth to learn all that stuff. It seems like you really are putting all of your attention and intention into healing yourself and the world, and it looks like the universe is seeing that and paying you back with it all.
Yeah,
So just keep on keeping on.
I will. Yeah. Thank you very much. And you do the same.
All right, thank you, my friend. All right, audience, we will talk to you later. Bye.